Hey, yeah, you with the sad face, come up to my place and live it up. It's me, Dr. Macclevoid, here once again to talk to you, to address you directly on this videogram. It's not my real name, obviously. Real name's Ed, but we all have to have a web handle these days. It's part of our branding, unfortunately. So, I have to start by apologising for my appearance. You can see that I'm a little bit more dishevelled than you're used to seeing. Normally, obviously, you see me in optimally groomed. At the moment, I'm a little bit hairy, and that's because following a rather unpleasant plane crash, I've just spent 4 years trapped on an island with Tom Hanks. And it was a ghastly experience, I can tell you. And I will never be able to sit through Philadelphia quite the same way again. That joke, if indeed it is a joke, can be interpreted any way you like. So, why are we here? Why have I invited you here? Well, to talk about Hollywood, to talk about strike action. Now, you may or may not be aware. I'd forgive you if you weren't aware, because I'm quite forgiving in that sense, that Hollywood is on strike. What do I mean by Hollywood? Well, I mean the actors and the writers. The writers have been on strike since May the 2nd, the Writers Guild of America. So, only scripts which were locked down, that is to say, finalised, could be produced. So, you couldn't alter the dialogue, you couldn't ad lib. Poor old Ryan Reynolds on the set of Deadpool 3. My God, he must be tearing his hair out. What's he going to do? Anyway, they've been on strike for a while over, I think, the threat from artificial intelligence, but we'll come on to that. And the Directors Guild of America, which has produced a separate deal, showed solidarity with them, but neglected to strike because they have got a pretty sweet deal. But yesterday, SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild, which compromises about 160,000 performers across movies and TV in the United States, decided that they would go on strike, and they did. And that means that the actors and the writers are now not working. And what does that mean? It means that movies and TV can't be produced. Not really. I mean, you can't produce a movie without actors, can you? Or without writers. Although, if you were being, cynical, you could say that we've been getting a lot of movies of late that might benefit from the absence of both of those. But look, they're on strike, and they're on strike because of concerns. And we're going to talk about those concerns in this videogram, and I'm going to give you my initial feelings and ideas about their demands, which I'm sure will in no way provoke any form of argument. You're not a disputatious lot, are you? I'm sure that you'll agree with me. Just be nodding along like the nodding dogs that you are. So let's get on with it. So what do they want? Well, they want money. Of course they do. They want more money. Because the last time that the contract was negotiated with the cabal, the cartel that run Hollywood. That's the let me just get this right. The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, AMPTP. That cartel, sorry, alliance of producers, negotiated a deal a long time ago, decades ago. They were last on strike in 1960, alongside the writers, in which actors would receive what we call residuals for their performances. In other words, every time a film was shown somewhere, every time a TV show was transmitted, they would get a repeat fee. Fair enough, you say. But back then, of course, the producers didn't realise that there would come a time when actually all of the old shit that they've made would become the backbone of the entire industry, because then, of course, most things were just sort of first run, and they might get the odd repeat here and there, but not a great deal. I mean, most shows sink and they're never seen again. Movies are a slightly different matter, but Anyway, little did they dream that one day in the future we would have libraries and libraries and libraries of archived crap. The massive proliferation of cable television channels and then of course streaming services, their spiritual successor, that would need lots and lots of content, tons of to bulk them out, because of course Netflix, for example, to begin with, didn't make any of its own content. It was just reliant on peddling, crap like Friends that we'd all seen already, but apparently people can't get enough of. So, because of this, if you're an actor and you've been in something, there's a good chance, particularly if it's something moderately successful, something that somebody somewhere might remember, that it's on one of these streaming services, or it's on, some obscure satellite channel or whatever. And when it's transmitted or when it's streamed, you'd expect to get some lucre. And you do get some lucre under the current arrangements, as I understand it, but you get less if it's on streaming. Because, of course, streaming services, the internet, didn't exist the last time the contract was negotiated. And consequently, it was unforeseen. Therefore, Netflix are under no obligation to pay actors the same amount to show every time somebody streams an episode of Friends as a television network would be obliged to do if they decided to repeat, or in the American parlance, rerun that show. So the actors are up in arms. They want more cash. Every time you stream an episode of TJ Hooker, William Shatner wants his cash. And who would begrudge William Shatner his cash? Not me, certainly. But of course, well-known actors like Matt Damon, for example, have been quick to point out that it's not about the haves, it's about the have-nots. It's about the bit part performers, the little guys and gals, the people that bulk out all of the crap and the content that we watch. Because they're not well paid. They're not paid millions of dollars like Matt Damon, or trillions of dollars like, I don't know, Tom Cruise. No. They barely survive. Matt Damon made the point that in America, if you earn less than $26,000 a year, that's about £22,000, give or take, you don't get any entitlement to health insurance. What? Really? It's very hard for somebody in my country of Great Britain to understand. Oh my God, there's an earnings threshold for health insurance in the acting profession. Members of Equity don't have to worry about that. If they fall and break their leg, they get their leg operated on, free of charge, good old National Health Service. But no, if you're in the North America, you're fucked. You don't get any of that. Now, I suppose from my point of view, one of the things that sort of bothers me about this has been this defence of the pay demand, citing the example of health insurance. What's wrong with that, you say? Isn't that just a sort of reality of the American way of life? Isn't it just a fact that if you don't earn enough money, you can't afford health insurance, and therefore that puts you in a very difficult position as a human being? Well, absolutely, that's all true. But isn't it a pity, ladies and gentlemen, that this incredibly powerful lobby, the Screen Actors Guild, that comprises of all of these very high profile Hollywood actors, people who really potentially have got the means to change public opinion if they so chose, if they spoke with one voice, are all peddling this line about health insurance, but they're not saying the real crime is that there is such a thing as health insurance. The real crime is that our members should have to pay for healthcare. Wouldn't it be better if we lived in a country with a universal healthcare system, free at the point of delivery? Wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe we should do that. Maybe no actor, or indeed anybody, because believe it or not, there are people who don't work in the entertainment industry. I know you'll find that hard to believe, but there are. Wouldn't it be great if all of those people could have free healthcare? But there's a thing in the US, they call it socialized medicine. They don't quite understand that it's arguably a human right, and therefore something that should be fought for on principle. Instead, what they're saying is they need more money so their members can funnel more cash into the disgusting, immoral US healthcare model. Is that the right argument? Prop up the insurance companies? Surely the right argument is let's get rid of all of it and let's use our awesome leverage, our collective bargaining power, to instill that idea in the American mind and really push it, really ram it home like a fist up a cow's anus. But that's just my view. You don't have to accept that. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. But it just seemed a little bit, unfortunate that hasn't occurred to anybody at all. Hey, I've put it out there now. Let's see what happens. I've seeded it. Then there comes the residuals argument, about, should you get more for repeat fees and so on and so on. I don't know, on principle, I think that's a perfectly reasonable argument. But again, it does sort of feel a little bit like the wrong argument. Do you want an industry that is propped up by an inexhaustible supply of old tat and rubbish? What about fundamental restructuring of the industry where you had fewer streamers, less content, but more original content? That'd be good, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? It might reintroduce something like the old communal viewing experience that we've all lost. You remember when we all used to watch the same stuff? And we talked about it, didn't we? And we enjoyed it, and it gave pop culture a sort of a collective feel. It was really good. It wasn't all these little millions of niche interests and so on that 9 people know about, nobody else does. I quite like the communal viewing experience. It seemed to me commensurate with, more quality. That could be romanticising the past a bit, couldn't it? Probably is. That's a whole debate point in and of itself. Was it really better in the old days? I don't know, but TV and movies felt more relevant back then. TV, in particular, movies will come to. The third argument that the Guild is particularly angry about is the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. Now, the cartel that run Hollywood have said what we'd like to do is we'd like to scan you all, just the once, give you a one-off fee, and then use your image in perpetuity, long after you're dead, in whatever capacity we see fit. Okay? Now, here, myself and the Screen Actors Guild would be of one mind. That is clearly an insane proposal. Um, and it reminded me, of course, of the lawsuit brought against Universal Pictures by Crispin Glover, who he was George McFly in Back to the Future. And please don't write in and say it's not how his surname is pronounced. I don't give a fuck. You know who I mean, and that's all that matters. We're going to call him George McFly from now on. George McFly was angry for reasons that are disputed. He chose not to appear in the Back to the Future sequels. And as Back to the Future 2 picked up immediately after the events of Back to the Future 1, that left Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, the writers and the director in the latter case, in the shit. What can they do? I mean, George McFly can't just suddenly disappear. And the problem was that the performance in the original movie was so vivid and so iconic that to replace him, well, you know, he was one of the characters you couldn't really replace. You could replace Marty's girlfriend, but you couldn't really replace, George McFly. So what did they do? Well, in the scene set in the future, they faked it with a different actor. They made him up to look like Crispin, and they filmed him in soft focus. And they tried to blag it, and basically the actor did a reasonable impression and sort of got away with it. And then they padded it out with archive footage in the 1955 portions of Part 2, and they killed the character off in the alternate 1985 so that to explain his absence and so on and so on. And conspicuously they didn't have him at all, hardly in Part 3. Whatever. George McFly sued and won. And the principle was established that an actor's likeness could not be used without their consent. Which again, you might think is okay. Personally, I'm partially sympathetic with the filmmakers. I think, the film must come first, the story must come first. And if an actor throws a hissy fit and decides they don't want to be in the movie because they become greedy or difficult or whatever, the idea that decision should derail the whole film, I find to be ridiculous. And in fact, I applaud Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale for finding a workaround. They didn't do too badly under the circumstances. But look, the legal principle was established that an actor's likeness is their own. It's part of their intellectual property, if you like, and they mustn't just give it away. So this proposal that you should scan an actor and then tell the flesh and blood original to piss off so that you can use their image in whatever capacity you see fit, it's obviously problematic. And actors are right to fear being replaced by computer generated synthespians, because synthespians work for free and they'll do whatever they're told to do by their human programmers. And they're not difficult, and they won't, like Daniel Day-Lewis, pretend to be disabled on the set of My Left Foot and force some poor bastard runner to feed them because they want to stay in character. A whole generation of actors who have got used to being able to be as difficult, antisocial, diva-ish and ridiculous as possible, their egos in full bloom, as it were, must be concerned because, God forbid, with the threat from AI, they might have to start acting like normal professional people. Not specially anointed adolescents. Can you imagine it? But, those of us who go to the movies would say, well, the problem here is, and this relates essentially to all of these demands, is that SAG are negotiating arguably from a position of weakness. For two reasons. One, because the industry is suffering from what you might call a sort of long COVID period, right? It was very badly hit by the pandemic. It's still in a state of recovery. That's why arseholes like Bob Iger at Disney, the official custodian of Walt Disney's frozen head, say things like, gee, this is a weird time for them to go on strike. Don't they know we're in crisis? Well, he's a bastard, but he's got a bit of a point, right? The industry is not recovered from COVID. People are only just going back to the cinemas. It's all a bit fragile. It's all a bit precarious. And this is the moment that SAG have chosen to walk out, thus putting another halt, potentially a very long halt, on film and television production. And the second point is that, if you think about it, star power, the power of the actor to draw people to new film and new television work has never been weaker. When was the last time you went to see a film because of who was in it, rather than what it was about? Well, if you're one of these people who's given up on the movies and only goes to see Marvel movies, for example, well, you're not going to see Doctor Strange because of Benedict Cumberbatch. You're interested in the character of Doctor Strange. And this is the thing, that the privileging of IP has sort of made the actors, though we're interested in the choices and who gets to play them, we're not so concerned anymore by who they are, whether they're a big name or a small name. We're only interested in how well they can realise the characters that we know and love, etc. Tom Cruise, who is doing very well still on the back of his name, is the exception, not the rule these days. And even he's peddling out a lot of, outdated, outmoded crap. Mission Impossible 7? Jesus Christ. This is a film series that's now nearly 30 years old. And Mission Impossible was 30 years old when the first movie came out. This is a guy that's allegedly saving cinema. So, stars don't open movies anymore. And we don't watch TV shows because of who's in them. Not really. It's all about concept, eye-catching, high concepts. And because of that, the actor's position is quite weak. Because they can't say, as they did back in 1960, that they are the difference between whether an audience shows up or doesn't show up. It's true, of course, that you need actors to populate films and television series. But the audience has never cared less about who those people are. And that should give every member of the Screen Actors Guild pause. Little wonder that Hollywood producers, those greedy, cynical little bastards, are thinking about replacing them with artificially computer-generated equivalents. Why not? Why not? If you can do it, it's a lot cheaper. So they should fear it. And, obviously a human performer will always be superior to a computer-generated equivalent. But at the same time, that only matters if the human actors are appearing in productions which have got a human soul if their performance actually means anything. I mean, if you replace Tom Holland, for example, with the computer generated Spider Man, would anyone really notice? But if you took Daniel Day-Lewis out of There Will Be Blood, you'd notice, right? Because his performance in that very human story means everything. His characterization means everything. And we need more movies like that. Movies where we actually give a shit about the human element at the centre of the story. And we need a great actor to bring that story to life. Not actors who are just essentially stand-ins for computer-generated avatars. In my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. But I'm fucking right! I think. Discuss. But yes, they've called this strike at a time when the industry's stateside is in trouble. And if it goes on too long, they might find that there isn't a movie industry for them to go back to. TV will be okay. But the movies? I expect to see more of your favourite Hollywood stars of old on the box in future. As of course, the migration has already began years and years ago, as film production became infantilized and the good long form original stuff began appearing on television, mainly on the streams. The only other thing I wanted to say about this was that if you are the actors going to producers or whatever and saying, "Look, we're invaluable. You can't live without us. If we don't get what we want, it's tantamount to the end of days. It's tantamount to an apocalypse," as I think I heard the head of the SAG say. Then the counter argument from the cabal that run Hollywood, from the cartel, and indeed from audiences will be, well, yeah, okay, but you produce shit, don't you? I mean, you know, if there was a constant stream of high quality, wonderful human stories coming out of Hollywood, films that touched us and moved us and stood up to multiple repeat viewings, films that made us think, art, if you will, then the people who make that product possible would have a hell of an argument, wouldn't they? But what if they were just taking their money and using it to star in a series of irrelevant, confected corporate products? I mean, I'll just, just give you an idea. I'm going to use this feature on the IMDb just to read out to you some of the films that are coming out in the next few months. These are not movies that are going to be to any great degree affected by the strike because they're completed. But just imagine, as I'm reading this list out, that this strike was occurring this time last year and these movies were still in production, so we're at risk of not making it into cinemas. Have that idea in your brain as I read out the following titles. Barbie, The Secret Kingdom, Mavka, The Forest Song, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, The Meg 2, Gran Turismo, the movie, Blue beetle. That's just the next couple of months. You excited by those titles? Movies delayed by this strike include Deadpool 3, Mission Impossible 8, Gladiator 2. Oh, fuck, what an awful world it would be if we never got to see those. Always negotiate from a position of strength, if you can. That's essential to successful collective bargaining. But that also means that you have to have a degree of self-awareness. Because then and only then can you know the right moment to strike, if you'll forgive the pun. I don't know, kids. I mean, a world without Hollywood, a world without those wonderful actors that fill our streamers and fill our cinemas with derivative, mindless content that could have been written by an AI for all we know, because there's so little original human creativity in evidence. What would a world like that be like? I'm just not sure. And what the fucking hell would we do without them? I mean, how would we pass our time without this stuff? I don't know. I just can't think.